Hi, my name is Gibson, and I'm the co-owner and creator of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and in this video I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why the fearful avoidant attachment style individual ghosts people at times. Now, this is part of a series that I'm making in terms of why each of the different insecure attachment styles may or may not ghost somebody in a relationship or the dating phase of a relationship. And keep in mind as I go through this is something I've been asked about a lot. Like, I've been asked to do this video for a very, very long period of time, and I know it's something a lot of people experience and it's quite common. So this isn't a video about why it's okay if somebody does this. This is a video about really understanding the root causes at a subconscious level of the patterns that I've observed in people that lead to this. And then this can help to give you some clarity as to why this might be taking place, which can then hopefully give you some closure. And at the end of this video, I've put a script together for how to communicate with a person who's fearful avoidant if they've in fact done this in a relationship. So before I dive in, we have our lifetime memberships available. They are on sale right now just for the month of September. There's like a 50% sale for our launch period here after so many requests from our students to provide these. So that is very exciting. I'm happy that we have them up. And we also have our coupon code still alive and running, which is with you, all one word, for 25% off if you just want to opt in for a 3 or 6 month membership to the school. And these come with all of our courses, all 30 plus courses from the past that we've recorded, which are each like 3 or so hours long. And then all of our webinars. We have like 150 webinars plus in our library. And I do an ongoing 4 live calls a week with people in our community. And there's also a Discord channel, a community channel where people can communicate on the forum and answer each other's questions. And it's a really beautiful place for deep learning, way more so than the YouTube channel here. And a lot of connection and community as well. So let's talk about this. So fearful avoidance, when they have an experience in a relationship where they ghost, usually it's because they feel so much guilt. Okay. And again, not like justifying that for fearful avoidance, but it can usually be because they feel so much guilt. Saying no and goodbyes can be quite painful for them, and they really hate hurting other people's feelings. And so it's not that that's the best way of doing so, but these are usually the subconscious root causes that lead to that output. And a lot of fearful avoidants put a lot of pressure on themselves to be perfect and maintain this perfect way of behaving in their interactions. And so sometimes when they originally avoid an interaction, like they decide, okay, no, this isn't the person I want to be in a relationship with, it's not really working out. Sometimes when they decide that in their mind, it's so clear, and then the idea of then communicating that or hurting somebody's feelings or saying, of leaving somebody to think that they weren't good enough for that relationship or something like that can be something that the fearful avoidant avoids. Because remember, the brain is wired to avoid pain. So anything we think is going to be painful, we naturally feel like, oh my gosh, we have to retract from at such a profound level. And so this is where most FAs will ghost in relationships. And so they can also ghost if they feel like they've overgiven and under-received, and then they burn out in that relationship. And if they feel like it's not appropriate for them to ask for their needs because of, again, like their past experiences. So for example, who they were in their roles in childhood and things like this, then what you'll often find is that they then again just feel like, okay, this isn't working. They feel guilty saying goodbye. And then they feel overwhelmed, hurting somebody or sometimes they can just feel like they're taking care of too many people's feelings in those relationships. So they can feel like, oh my gosh, maybe they've got a lot going on in their different social relationships. And from that perspective, they can feel like they're putting themselves out in all these different areas because the fearful avoidant has that nature to not nature, but nurture from a very long time ago to be a little bit more codependent. And so sometimes they can get overwhelmed by that and then feel like, oh my gosh, I can't, say no to this person over here. And they can just sort of shut down. And there's something that I had clients at a point in time, and they used to make this joke about, it's sort of like the dismissive avoidant and fearful avoidant go into their comas. And it's not really necessarily the best word, but it's like that analogy of like when there's just this shutting down or withdrawing completely and needing to just soothe through themselves. And this can be something that happens for fearful avoidance and dismissive avoidance both. And they're very unlikely to interact or want to interact from those perspectives. And usually it's because of some form of perceived imbalance for a long period of time, or maybe because stressors or things like that are overwhelming. And then they just sort of withdraw into themselves as a protective mechanism, because the avoidant attachment styles both share that side in terms of how they cope and these ingrained coping mechanisms that they've had from very long periods of time ago. And then if you combine that with the fearful avoidance feelings of guilt and not wanting to hurt people's feelings and not wanting to bear that weight, then obviously you can get an output where somebody's fearing and avoiding. Okay, so keep that in mind. And again, not excusing those things, but trying to give you the root causes of why this might be taking place. Okay. Now you might see too in the dating phase of a relationship that a fearful avoidant just, it's early into the relationship and they're going, I'm not that interested. And fearful avoidants again tend to project from their perception. And they share this with the dismissive avoidant in the sense that they'll go, well, ghosting might not hurt me very much, so it's probably not a big deal to that person. And they're not necessarily thinking ghosting. They're thinking probably like, if I stopped hearing from this person, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. And so they just assume that there's an okayness there a lot of the time. And so many conversations I've had with many different fearful avoidants around this topic. So that is another huge motivating factor. And then another big piece here is that sometimes fearful avoidants don't trust themselves to uphold their own boundaries. And similarly to the DA, they don't like to explain themselves in certain contexts and situations before they feel like they have enough emotional connection with somebody. They feel like it's funny to explain themselves. And so you might see, for example, that a fearful avoidant doesn't want to say, oh, the relationship isn't working, because they don't want the person to say, why isn't it working? Let's try this. Let's do this instead. Can we go on another date? And sometimes they don't trust themselves to uphold those boundaries when in fact they are so clear that that's where they're at, that then they just go, oh my gosh, I don't want to have that conversation at all, because I don't want to end up in a situation where I'm being pressured into something if they feel disempowered in their capacity or ability to say no. So again, fearful avoidants can pull away from relationships because they're disinterested in a relationship, because it's not working for what they need. They can pull away because they find themselves over giving and under receiving. And they can also pull away because their fears and wounds are coming up, and they're like, oh, commitment or more seriousness or things like that, especially if they're with somebody more anxious, that can push them more into their avoidant side. And then they're gonna have more of the expression of the dismissive avoidant fears and the anxious preoccupied side of fears, because they tend to really carry those core wounds and fears of both. So then combined with the guilt and the not wanting to explain themselves or have conflict, there you have that whole recipe, or the not trusting themselves to uphold their boundaries. So that's sort of the whole scope. And then when we look at a script for how to address this if you're on the receiving end, I would say something like this. I would start it off similarly to the dismissive avoidant, and I would say, hey, I noticed our communication has ended. I want you to know I really appreciated our time together, and I'm not upset with you at all that things didn't work out or that we've stopped talking. I just wanted to wish you the best, and I hope we can leave our interaction remaining on good terms. And so it's very similar to the dismissive avoidant version, but the fearful avoidant version is there's a couple little shifts. One of the big things is you emphasize that you're not upset at all that things didn't work out, because it absolves some of that guilt. Okay, and that's a very highlighted position. And then another big piece is, it's leaving things on a light note. It's I want us to leave things on a good note, and it's not saying, hey, I'm gonna come here and try to convince you why the relationship should work, so your boundaries will be upheld. And there's that piece in there as well that's insinuated. And so that totality of the interaction is most likely to get you a response from that person. And again, the response shouldn't be to get the relationship back together or to move things back to that same place, but to literally be able to just gain that closure that you might need in this interaction. And one other thing I want to add, when I talk about the guilt for the fearful avoidant, and the perfectionism that they carry in their relationship interactions, sometimes too, they'll feel like, oh my gosh, if I tell the person that I'm not interested in pursuing the relationship, or the chemistry is not there, or whatever it might be, I am bad. Like, how could I feel like that? And they can judge themselves a lot for like how they're feeling about their relationships and interactions too, which I find to be another interesting sort of piece in there. So I hope that all makes sense. I hope this has been beneficial. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if you're getting a lot of value out of these videos, and I will see you in the next one.